Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley, along with Tim Fitzgerald. Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders. Thank you guys for showing up and showing out like you always do. Look, we've been doing a lot of complaining, or I have been doing a lot of complaining, a lot of bitching and moaning about the Big 12, and we're being, treated unfair and yada, yada, yada. Well, you know what? I'm usually a person, Fitz, that says stop complaining. Stop complaining and go do something about it. Well, today, people, we're going to talk about what the Big 12 needs to do. I'm going to stop complaining and flip the script and take some of my own advice and say, you know what? What do we need to do to try to ensure that the Big 12 can get more teams into this college football playoff, that we can be a part of the mix versus just an also-ran? Because it's quite as I know Arizona State got the bye, which they should have. Let's not kid ourselves. But it was almost like an also-ran or a because Clemson got in, this is the only way that you got to bye. That's basically how it is. So we're going to go into that today, Fitz, talk a little bit about that, and stop complaining, stop whining, and go take some action with this thing. So
I like it. I'll start here. The Big 12 got in what it was supposed to get in this year.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
We can argue about BYU over SMU, and I'll back you in that argument. But for whatever reason, the committee held SMU in a higher standing than BYU. I think they were wrong. But I don't think it was because it was the Big 12. I mean, it's SMU, for goodness sakes, of the ACC. It's not like they were leaning into Alabama or something. I just think they thought SMU was better, and that even though they lost the championship game, it proved that fact. And if you back up and say, if you look at it this way, Big B, Arizona State, Clemson, SMU, Boise, and Indiana are all in the field. I think the 12-team playoff worked.
Yeah.
It opened the door to other opportunities. Now, the SEC can bitch all they want about we need more teams in, but you also did not earn it on the field. And the Big 12 devoured itself. We saw it happen. We knew what the consequences were, and it just happened. This conference was too competitive. It was competitive to a fault.
Right.
I think Arizona State's going to be competitive in this playoff. I don't think anyone's going to smoke them. They're a really solid team that's going to make everyone earn it. But I'll say this. Step one, Arizona State needs to win a game.
Yeah. I've fought that a little bit over the past couple of weeks, saying, well, the Big 12's got to go win. But you know what? In all actuality, if we're being honest, yes, they got to win a game. They got to go win to try to go get some credibility to this thing that they didn't just put us in. The first thing is, for me, is number one, I think there's going to be some changes next year because the ESPN and SEC, they're not going to stand for only having a certain number of teams in this thing. They're not going to stand for that. So they're going to make some changes to this. And in actuality, the changes that are going to get made are right. Don't have automatic qualifiers as conferences, but don't have the conference champions be automatic buys.
I agree.
Okay, you don't need to have that, or the top four get automatic buys. That's not the way that anything like this even works. I thought it was a horrible idea to begin with. Just rank the teams, and the top four, that's who gets the buys. It doesn't matter if you're a conference champion or not, if that's the way you perceive it. Now, I know what their thinking is that, well, all four are going to be conference champions. Well, that's not the way that it worked out this year, did it? Now, for whatever reasons, it is what it is. But that's the first thing I think they're going to make a change. But just specifically to the Big 12, here's my thought. And I want to know what, number one, people you all think. Get in the comments and let me know. I think the Big 12 has got to take what the athletic director at Alabama said to heart. Stop scheduling non-conference tough football games. Start scheduling group of 5, just mediocre football games, and let the chips fall where they may. That's literally what he came out and said. Now, the reason that he said it, Fitz, it was a total contradiction because he said we're going to have to stop playing Power 4 non-conference games because strength of schedule clearly didn't matter. The one Power 4 team that you played this year was Wisconsin. Everybody, other than that, you played Southern Miss. I think it was Southern Miss or Charlotte, Mercer, Western Kentucky. So it's not like you scheduled 4, Power 4 teams. You didn't do that. So if you're going to say, well, we're not even going to play Wisconsin anymore, a team of their caliber, we're just going to go even further. Okay, great. You also only play 8 conference games. So if I'm the Big 12, I'm like, you know what? You're right. We're just going to not, and I don't want to hear about strength of schedule because you don't care about that. That's not part of this anymore. Can't be. But that's my first thing, Fitz. I got some others, but that's my first one. Tell me what you think about that.
First of all, shut up, Alabama AD. Come on. You didn't miss out on the playoffs because of your non-conference schedule.
No.
You lost to a pair of 6-6 teams. That's like you're pointing the finger at something that had nothing to do with why you were left out.
No.
An easier schedule. You guys almost couldn't make it easier, but you found a way. Not schedule non-power schools in the non-conference. I'm telling you, Big B, it's become very clear to me that the SEC is concerned with one thing: freezing perceptions right here.
Yes.
This is it. The SEC is better than everyone else. That'll never change.
Yep.
We can't change it. Excuse me. We can't play any games that might threaten that. We've got the perception. We've got that great hypothetical that we love. The hypothetical is in our favor. Everyone thinks we're better. Let's not let them disprove that.
Right.
That's what I hear. I hear cowardice when he says this. Look, everyone lost conference games except for one school. Everyone faced teams that they thought they should beat and they didn't beat. That isn't unique to the SEC.
No.
Shut up, man.
No.
Not everything you do proves your superiority. Maybe you're not as good all the way to the bottom as you think you are.
Yeah.
So, I'm really opposed to going back to 8 games in conference play. I'm opposed to ditching all good play opponents in non-conference play, but I am strongly in favor of everyone having the same rules. Do you play 8 or 9 conference games? Are you required to play a power institution in the non-conference or not? Let's lay that out in the selection committee's criteria so the conferences know. And personally, I think anything below 10 power level games should be a detraction. You're immediately admitting we don't play as hard a schedule. We can't schedule power 4 teams because they're so good, so we're going to schedule fewer. You are admitting you're scheduling light.
Yep.
So if you're not going to schedule 10 like everyone else should be, then you get a detraction for 9 and a huge one for 8. Let's set the rules across the board. If the SEC doesn't like it, have fun in your own little world. Because even I think the Big Ten is getting sick of the SEC right now.
Yeah, and here's the thing also, and look, I'm not trying to compare football to basketball because, obviously there's so many more games in basketball, and the margin of error is a lot wider than it is in football. However, it's been like this for years. It's always when it comes March Madness time, who did you play and who did you beat? Those are that's kind of the gold standard of what comes down to when it comes to picking teams to be in the tournament. These at-large teams that get into the tournament. Who did you play and who did you beat? Why can't they just do that with the committee? Who did you play and who did you beat? Now, the SEC would have you think, okay, we're playing all these tough conference games. That should be all we have to play. And everything else literally doesn't matter. I know we got a cupcake game in the middle of November. I understand that. But nothing else should have to matter. And my thinking about that is, like I said, as far as the Big 12 is, well, then just copy that then. If it's going to be good enough for them, and then dare you to keep us out. Let 2 teams have 1 loss, and then dare you to keep us out. Because then the writing will be on the wall that it's unfair. It will clearly be on the wall that it's unfair. And then what happens at that point? I think this year the committee got backed into a corner and had to put SMU in. And now, again, I'm with you. I don't know why they looked at SMU because the results clearly didn't matter because how did BYU not get in? And what are they going to say? Well, they lost to Kansas. Okay, they lost to Kansas. They also lost to the Big 12 champ. Well, BYU wasn't going to get in over Alabama. That wasn't going to happen. And I would say Kansas, until their last game, was playing as well as anybody in the country. That they give that same argument and that same grace to a team like Florida. Well, Florida stunk at the beginning of the year. Miami went to Florida and destroyed them. That's one of the, for Ole Miss, Fitz, that's one of their good losses. Florida. Huh? And that's why I'm just like, what are we talking about here? What are we doing? It's just the rules have to be the same, but I'm for the Big 12 doing whatever it needs to do to get more teams. Now, again, you got to start off by winning. You can't go and it's all, like I said yesterday, I did bring this up. TCU, it's almost like they forgot that they beat Michigan to get into the national championship game. Like nobody talks about that.
No,
they only talk about how they got destroyed by Georgia, which they did. That's the only thing that matters. And that's almost like the only thing that's on anybody else's mind when they look at the conference. Well, we gave you an opportunity and you got killed. I go, well, hold on. We had to win a game to get there against a team that they were a double-digit underdog to. And if anybody can remember, Fitz, TCU physically beat Michigan in that football game. Physically whipped a team that everybody thought couldn't be beat physically. TCU did that. And that gets lost in translation. I get it. Okay, now we got to build our reputation. Go win a football game. I would say that they need to schedule these non-conference games, but if the SEC doesn't want to do it, then why should we? And we all know why the SEC, those teams aren't going to do it. They're not going to do it because they don't want to risk a loss because we play in the toughest conference in the country. So, we're going to lose some of those games. We don't want to schedule anybody else. If it's going to be good enough for them, I think the Big 12 goes the other way and backs them into a corner, Fitz, and says, I dare you to keep us out.
Everyone has to do the same.
Yeah.
Everyone goes, oh, you're going to do that? Okay, we're going to do it too.
Yep.
What are you going to do? SEC start playing 6 conference games?
Yep.
I don't get it. Look, you guys had opportunities like every other conference to prove who belonged on the field. The Big 12 ate each other alive. So did the SEC. Mm-hmm. You guys got 3 in. The Big 12 got 1 in.
Right.
And you played one less game. One less conference game. I still can't wrap
had a loss.
Yeah, I can't wrap my mind around the SEC being so sold that they're better than everyone else, but they play 8 games. Folks, that alone, if you are better, which you are, the top teams are better, I'm going to admit that. But that devalues you. That brings you down. We're less certain of your quality because now we don't have as many data points against power level teams.
Right.
We're going to get them. We're going to get them in the playoff. There's some changes I'd like to make, though, Big B. I think the Big 12 should support not getting a bye. I don't think it's in Arizona State's best interest to advance immediately to the second round to honestly play a team that should be seated higher than it is, and probably Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Big 12 and the ACC should say, look, we'll go along with not the first round bye, but we will not accept a conference champion, having to play another conference champion in the first round. So you can't say, oh, the SEC and Big Ten get all the byes and you guys can play each other.
Correct.
You can't overlap. And the conference championship champions need to be guaranteed a home game in that first round. That's the key concession. Because now Arizona State would be playing someone at home. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure who, but Arizona State would be lining up with a more similar team on its home field. Probably from the SEC or Big Ten, because we just eliminated the champions from every other lower power conference or the non-power conference. Then you got a chance on your home field to prove it. And then you built that confidence and you move into the next round. But for these clowns saying that some schools have a easier road or tougher road because of who got buys and didn't, if you're playing 4 games to win a championship, you've got a steeper road than 3 games. There's no argument you can make that sells that. I mean, nobody has an easier road because they didn't get a buy. That makes no sense to me. No, but it also underscores, Big B, their disdain for every other conference. This isn't a game. This is an annoyance. We shouldn't have to prove this. We're the SEC. Why do we have to play this? Just advance us.
Yeah.
It's so annoying.
It's annoying. In my perspective, as far as the Big 12, like I said, they got to play some hardball. They got to go win some games. What are some other avenues? I do love your approach of saying, look, can't have buys automatically to conference champions, but they do definitely get a home game, and they can. And if they get a home game, then they won't be playing each other because,
right.
you
they try that.
Yeah, that's got to be the key, is that conference champion gets in. They don't necessarily get a bye, but they get a home game. Okay, great. That makes it that I'm willing to live, not willing to live with it. I love that idea. But from the Big 12's perspective, look, I'm just going to be frank and honest. The Big 12's got to have a team that steps forward. That's the one thing that has to happen. Look, we're blaming other conferences, blaming this, blaming that, blaming that. You know what? Sometimes you got to look inward. The Big 12 needs a team. And it can be 2 or 3 teams, but they need a team to step forward and say, okay, we got control of this conference. We got control. We're that team. We're that school, and if they do that, then things will get better. Now, I think everybody thought the first year, and I'm not talking about specifically teams, that we were going to struggle in getting that type of respect anyway because we lost Texas and OU. That was just going to happen. Nothing you can do about it. You lose 2 blue blood programs like that. It's just human nature. Well, now it's time that the Big 12, okay, somebody's got to step up. Somebody's got to take the lead here and say, you know what? It's us. We're that school. Can that happen? I guess that's a good question that I'll start with, Fitz. Can one of the Big 12 schools step up and be that school, and what's it going to take?
I agree. We need that. No doubt about it. Let me back up here, Big B, because if you look at the former Big 12, in that interim after Nebraska, Colorado, A&M, they all left Missouri. So people in the SEC seem to think Texas ran the conference. The farthest thing from the truth.
Correct.
They won the last title of their membership, but they didn't run the conference. It's Oklahoma that ran the conference.
Correct.
What Oklahoma gave was a standard. A standard that, most seasons you had to match up with on the field when they were at 10. Every year you had to match up to Oklahoma. You knew what the standard was. You saw it. And I feel like Oklahoma made programs like Oklahoma State and Kansas State, Iowa State, and others better because you knew where the ring was and you had to reach for that ring. It was Oklahoma, and they got there. It wasn't just that Oklahoma got worse. Yeah, they did a little bit, but I feel like everyone closed the gap. TCU proved it in exactly your point earlier in the show. They made it to the playoff, and they beat the Big Ten champion. That didn't disappear because they got blown out in the final. They played like crap against Georgia. Georgia played out their minds. That's exactly what was going to happen because Georgia, we're not saying Georgia is like anyone else in the Big 12. They're much better. What I'm saying is not everyone in your conference is much better. Get over yourself.
Correct.
And all of a sudden this year, your conference got more competitive. Why? Well, I suspect it's because those schools like Oklahoma came down to the pack a little bit. But the Big 12 needs an Oklahoma. They needed Texas in terms of we've got the big budget. Those unfair advantages, perceived maybe, make others work harder to achieve the same success. And if we don't have those, I'm afraid we're going to be a conference of settlers. Oh, we're pretty good. We're the best in this conference. But what if the conference of roads isn't very good? So I think you're right. And I'm gonna say some controversial stuff here, but there's only a few schools this can be. One, you have to be able to recruit at the highest levels to win the recruiting wars, because somehow they think those decide outcome of games. Look, it does in some ways, but not just because you have better recruiting classes doesn't mean you're a better program. We've seen that over and over. Colorado is the only one recruiting at that level under Dion. That only one close. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
BYU probably has the resources to be a kind of a bully, to do whatever they want to do, to get the players with NIL money. I don't know if they will. They've got other principles that are out there, and I appreciate that. We'll see. Utah. You came in beating your chest, but not for empty reasons. You had indeed had a string of championships. You won. You did have some momentum, and then it all fell apart on you. But I think there's a program there, along with the Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma States, Texas Tech, that are all fairly comparable, can reach there. But they're at an advantage because they have had more success in a conference that was more competitive for many years. Oklahoma ran the Big 12 for many years.
Yes.
But in the end, everyone tracked down Oklahoma and caught up to it. And without that, I'm fearful for the Big 12.
Yeah, that is a great point, is that Oklahoma, and everybody knows it, and Texas fans won't admit it, but they know. It was Oklahoma for the better part of 15 years that ran the Big 12 conference. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Doesn't mean that they won every game either, because that's what some people will, well, we beat them. Yes, everybody's capable of losing a football game. But consistency, Oklahoma was the standard. And everybody knew that they were the standard, and you had to go get them. Love that analogy. You're exactly right. Now who's going to take that brass ring that they left behind? We'll see. Again, the things that you have to do, you got to go compete on a national level. You got to go recruit. I know people hate Dion for whatever reason you want, but here's what Dion did. Let's just talk about that for a quick second. He basically just turned over the entire roster in 2 years.
Incredible.
Everybody just turned the whole thing over. People didn't like it, but what he said was the 90% of the kids that are here don't deserve to be at a Big 12 school. We're going to get them out of here, and that's what he did. Whether you like that or not, that's what he did, and the rules allow you to do that. And if you go back and you mentioned, he kept saying, the rules allow you to do this. So he did that. Then it was, well, all he's doing is doing it with transfers, and that's not sustainable. And I am 1,000,000% agreed on that. Just getting transfers is not sustainable. You can't do that because you're going to miss on probably half of the transfers, and they did. And then you look at their recruiting class this year. While they didn't get a ton of kids, they got 15 or so, and they may get some more, and some of those guys are high-level recruits, Fitz. I'm just saying, you don't have to like his methods. You don't have to like his perceived arrogance, if that's what you call it. But is there, in this day and age, is there a better turnaround job of that outside of Arizona State? Because I'm going to put Arizona State at the top. But other than that, what job better turnaround of a program have you seen that has happened this quickly? And we'll see if it's sustainable next year, because they lose a lot, but we'll see. But Lord have mercy, that's literally how you do it. And if they can win and put it together, Colorado, while they may not have the biggest NIL fits, people love Dion. He's going to get celebrities giving him money that come in. Who's going to match that? Now, granted, there's donors from other places that have more money than celebrities. That's not my point. But they're going to get money from everywhere. They're going to get money from people that just love them that are going to send them money. It's just, if Colorado is the team, I'm fine. I don't care who it is, to be honest with you. I'm just saying that's a blueprint that I think everybody could get behind. Arizona State, I think, has a blueprint, because I said at the beginning of the year, I thought Arizona State's a sleeping giant because they got the alumni base. They just needed something to get behind. You know, they weren't going to support bad administration. Our man Chris Cartman showed us the way. It was bad administration, bad coaching, and a bad product on the field. Well, who's supporting that? They changed the administration. They changed the coaching. They changed the players. Boom. Here they are. And you saw the support that they put that game against BYU. Lord have mercy. I mean, you talk about a huge game at home. I mean, it just the whole season. So if that's the model too, I'm behind it. I just think somebody has got to take the reins and somebody's got to step to the forefront and be that team. Who it is, I don't know. How you do it, there's two examples. Transfer portal and NIL are a huge part of it, Fitz. People can hate that. They can dislike it if they want. But do you want to win? Because if you want to win, you got to dip into it. You just have to. You can't afford not to, at this point, if you're trying to compete, because everybody else is.
A couple points here that I like. You're right. Arizona State and UCF also could fall into that category because they have the resources. They have the fan base. They have these massive alumni bases. And this is really true for UCF. If you can get them engaged at a higher level with attending games, supporting games, giving to the NIL, giving to the athletic department, because those things need to keep continuing, they can be a problem. Their budget can rise and really force your hand. I mean, if Arizona State decides to have a national recruiting budget, the rest of Big 12 is going to have problems matching up with that. So we'll see how that plays out. But there's enough potential in this conference now. Someone has to step up and take advantage of it. Because let's be honest, this conference could be dominated if one program made the big step forward. And I don't think you're going to make that big step forward through the portal. You're going to make a temporary step forward. But there's just too much volatility in the transfer market. You can get better players and a worse team. You can get a bunch of non-power players and even FCS players and win. Look at Indiana. Did a lot of that. So, I don't know. Big B, I got rattled because my dogs walked in the room and farted really loudly behind me. And then I'm thinking, if that came across the mic, nobody's going to believe it was my dogs. Nobody's going to believe it. And Daphne just let one hum. So anyhow, this whole thing's stinky. I tied those together.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. Number one in this playoff, but really my point with all of this, and I wanted to talk to everybody today, is because somebody's got to take the reins. At some point, we got to stop the complaining and we got to start doing.
Right.
It's don't get me wrong. It's fun to complain. It's fun to accuse. It's fun to attack. I love all of that. You guys know me long enough. I'm in for all of that. But at some point, we got to stop doing that, and we got to start, okay, what can we do better to make sure that we get multiple teams in this, to make sure that we are competing at a higher level? Because whether you believe that the Big 12 had more, was a better conference than the ACC or not, maybe you do, maybe you don't. The perception right now is that it wasn't. What do we need to do to be able to get two teams in? How do we get the same kind of cred that the ACC got? That's the first step. Let's get that kind of cred. Then we can go further from there. Pick them off one by one. Some people say start at the top. Well, okay, when you're saving money and you say, I want to save $10,000, you don't say, well, you know what? I need to save $10,000. I take all of my paychecks, all the times that I get paid, don't pay any bills, and then I'll save $10,000. Well, it doesn't work that way. You just got to take baby steps till you get there. Pick off the ACC first, and do it that way. Again, I'm a proponent. I'm trying to follow the lead of the SEC, or at least the Alabama athletic director. And if he's saying it, all the athletic directors feel that way. Let's schedule less opponents. Well, fine. If that's the way you want to play it, fine. Selection committee, you either come out with a set of rules or we're going to play by their rules. And if we play by their rules, you better give us the same respect, because if you don't, everybody will know it's a farce.
Right.
And that's what I'm really about, is just proving that all of this is a farce. Because if everybody has different rules, kind of what you said, Fitz, if the rules are different for everybody, how can it ever be fair? And how will it ever be fair? And that's kind of what the SEC is saying. Just like you said, they don't want it to be fair. We can never be kicked off the throne because we're only going to play by these rules, and everybody else gets held to a different standard, including the Big Ten. They get held to a different standard too.
Yeah,
so
that's something I've noticed. Big Ten's beginning to push back on some of this nonsense.
They are.
They're beginning to see what the SEC is trying to do, and now the SEC is kind of hinting, well, we're just keeping the Big Ten around because we can beat them. I mean, that's basically what they're saying. They're the best conference that's not us.
Yeah.
Look, the ACC has a scheduling advantage over the Big 12. They've got some built-in games. For example, Iowa State has Iowa. That game happens every year. Well, those games in the ACC are against SEC teams. Georgia Tech gets Georgia, and Clemson gets South Carolina, and there's another one I just had in my mind. But there's certain games, Miami playing at Florida. So they're built in. They're going to play those. And if you win those, and they did, it should show that you're better and maybe they're not as good. The interesting thing that happened is the committee said, oh, the ACC is better, but the SEC is still a lot better than them.
Yeah. Didn't make any sense.
Everything you need to know is Georgia moved up 2 spots after having to use 8 overtimes to beat Georgia Tech on their home field. That's all you need to know about the thinking of this committee and what a trash spectacle they turned this into.
Yeah. And basically it was a correct from what they did to Georgia several weeks ago, which I thought was right. They dropped them, 9 spots when they lost. They got the doors blown off of them by Ole Miss. They dropped them 9 spots to when they were out. And you're like, well, yeah, you just went and got embarrassed by somebody. So what do you expect? You can't just stay there. Well, then they were like, oh, we probably dropped them too far if we really want to keep, because they've got a couple of tough games left. Yeah, that's not going to work out. So it was just crazy.
It's obvious what they were doing.
Exactly. It's just basically a recorrect of a mistake that they did, but it is what it is. But I didn't want to come on in here and rant too long. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate you, Fitz. I just think, like I said, we got to stop the pointing and the ranting and the complaining. We can still, let me take that back. We can still do that, and I'm going to still do that. But at some point, we also have to say, okay, it's time to get solution-based here. Let's figure out some ways that we can get better. When they don't want to give us the respect, let's just go take it. Let's go take the respect. What do we need to do to go take that respect?
That's why they don't want to schedule you, because they know you can do it.
Correct. Because I can tell you right now, if Texas and OU, and not so much OU, but if Texas previously didn't have to schedule non-conference games in the Big 12, they wouldn't have done that. They didn't want to play. That's why Texas was so upset, because they couldn't run the conference for so long. They ran it monetarily and basically ran it through the commissioner's office, but on the actual football field, they couldn't run it. And that's what frustrated them so much. Part of that was because they knew OU was running it and they couldn't. But then they couldn't win enough games and beat enough teams to be able to run it on the field and say, hey, look at us, we're great. And that was frustrating. Trust me. And you know that, Fitz. That's what frustrated them more than anything, is that OU was running it and they couldn't win enough games to actually say that we were the best. Now, they ran it through the commissioner's office for a long time, basically since the inception. But they couldn't run it on the football field, and it drove them crazy. It drove them to leave. They got it going now. I'm not going to take anything away from them. They've got some stuff going for themselves right now. I'll be interested to see this playoff game, but neither here nor there. But yeah, it's just time for the Big 12 to just step up, Fitz. It's time to take some accountability and go take some respect that basically nobody else wants to give us. So
amen, brother.
I feel like those are just some things that we needed to talk about. I'm interested to see what these comments are going to be, because I feel like people are going to have a lot of solutions, a lot of different ways that they believe the Big 12 can do that.
I agree. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I'd like to hear some people think about why some other schools could, quote, run the conference. What schools are in a good position to dominate this conference, and look at it through your own lenses. I mean, if you're a West Virginia fan, let me know how the new coach can come in and run the conference. because it's available. That's what's cool right now about the Big 12 is I really thought we'd see a better shaking out of the pecking order in season 1. We didn't. It got worse. We don't know what the hell's going on. And so, yeah, season 2, 3, and 4, if it continues this churn of unpredictable teams rising up and being good, honestly, Big B, that's fun for the conference. Good. It's really cool, but it's not good overall.
No.
I mean, because someone should be able to sustain success. And that's at this point now, maybe it will be Arizona State, maybe it will be Iowa State coming off an appearance. But the opportunity is there for a lot of schools to be that school.
Correct. It's fine if you don't have a dominant team that wins it every single year. Oh, right. You didn't win it every year, but you need somebody to be the lead dog. And maybe it's a couple of teams. It wouldn't even be bad if it's a couple of teams that are the lead dogs. Okay, fine. But you need somebody. You need somebody to take the lead, and you couldn't be more right about how it's wide open and how, look, parity is great, and I think parity is fun. And I think that can be a strength of the conference when you have parity, but you still need somebody to be in charge. So you still need the lead guy.
Big B, when I was a little kid, we did a lot of holidays down in Florida. Where I was born, where my grandparents were during that time of year. There's one thing I learned from my youth and going to the dog track with my grandfather is if you want the dog to run faster, you put a rabbit in front of it, even if it's a fake rabbit. The Big 12 needs a rabbit to go chase. And that means the field will keep up with it. And that's really important. Right now, at this moment, someone needs to emerge as the rabbit. And as we sit here right now, again, for me, the one that can immediately do that is Colorado.
Yeah, it's just the truth. It's just the truth. Doesn't mean it will happen.
Nope.
But that's the team that you would look to where it could happen. So we'll see what happens there. Well, I appreciate everybody, man. As Fitz has mentioned this a couple of different times, I'm going to mention it again. Throw ideas in the comments section. Put them in there and let us know exactly what you want to talk about as we're going through this bowl. Obviously, we're going to have a bowl game edition. We're going to break that down. We're going to start getting into basketball. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm pushing back a little bit on basketball just for the simple fact of if I put a basketball video out there right now, you guys aren't going to watch it. I just flat out tell you. And you're just not going to watch it. And because you're not that interested, I'm interested, but it's just not time yet. It's just, for me, it's not time. If you guys tell me I'm wrong and say, no, Big B, we need to start talking about basketball, I'll listen to that too. But for me, it's just right now, this football is still ruling the day. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So if you got some other ideas, let us know in the comments. Again, as always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, and definitely dip into those comments and always hit the notification bell so you know exactly when Big 12 Insiders content comes out. Appreciate you guys. We will talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.